Okay, a quick word about the founders of the United States. They get a lot of flack nowadays, but I think what we need to remember is they were men of their time and ahead of their time also. They were part of the Enlightenment of Europe. They were an exceptionally well-read group. Many of them had the equivalent of a college education or beyond as attorneys and doctors and so forth. They thought a lot about where they were headed and what they wanted to do and the type of country they wanted to live in. They had read a great deal by people like John Locke and in the Enlightenment, Voltaire and Rousseau and so forth. They were concerned about stability, which is the reason for the Constitution, because their first attempt, the Articles of Confederation, had not worked very well, and then they got back together to write the Constitution. And a lot of the Constitution is compromise, different viewpoints, different ideas, different ways to go, and they came up with a republic, not a democracy, a republic. It's a republic with democratic aspects to it, and it was limited at the time, but with options, thus the amendments, to move on. Now, again, you have to remember or think about the fact that they were still a product of their time. They were reaching out and trying to come up with something new, and they did. They changed the world. After them and after the American Revolution, the world changed, and most of us, hopefully, will consider that a good thing. Some people may not. But two universities were founded, University of Pennsylvania by Benjamin Franklin, University of Virginia by Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson's library was the beginning of the Library of Congress. And I'm going to talk about them as a group right now as opposed to individuals, and this is just a quick thought that I'm coming up with. But I think too often people are trying to equate them with today and our ideas of today. And you have to remember, you would not be where you are today if they had not done what they did and were not who they were. They gave us the infrastructure to create what we have now. And some people are upset about that. They want more of this or more of that and so forth. But they recognized, which the French Revolution did not, neither did the Russian Revolution, that people can get a little crazy and you need to kind of slow things down. And so they created the Republic of the United States out of the several states at that time, 13. And the states created the government. And again, I think we have to remember that in looking back. But you have to. I'm encouraging people to read, and good Lord, the books that have been written on Washington and Jefferson and Franklin and Madison, and just and those are the best known. Alexander Hamilton. And I would encourage you to read the Federalist Papers, which were actually written by Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and Madison. And Madison has been called the father of the Constitution because he was the one who had thought things through the most. think about these things, consider them, and these little videos that I'm making are encouraging you to read. Too many times we today tend to want to go for the quick fix, and so we have things like Twitter, 142 characters, I think, and so forth, without having to go through the thought process. And we'll talk about that more. But and there are different ways to approach the Constitution. When I was in college, I took a course. It was called Beard's Economic Interpretation of the Constitution. It's Charles Beard. And in many ways, he was agreeing, or was the forerunner of some people today, in that he said that the Constitution was written by a bunch of propertied people who were only interested in preserving their own property. And to some extent, that's true. But if you don't preserve property, and if you don't look at stability, you have chaos, and you have a lot of people coming to this country simply because they live in countries that don't respect property rights and individual rights and so forth. The sad thing is when a lot of them get here, they want to convert us to what they ran away from. But to understand who we are and where we came from, you have to understand the founders. And you can't understand them by thinking about them in today's terms. Actually, many of them were in advance of us because they understood the craziness that we can devolve into. But anyway, that's a quick little rundown and just some thoughts. And I would encourage you to go to Google or to wherever and look up titles on George Washington. And again, George Washington, without him, there would be no country. I mean, or the others. I mean, they were all together, but I mean, he truly was the indispensable man. And and again, they're all getting a lot of flack today because of a lot. We're not going to go into that right now, but of all of them, and they were all necessary. They all kind of came together. But he was the indispensable man, and without him, and without what he thought through and what he did and the way he melded things together, and he got people like Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson who hated each other's guts to work together and so forth. And because of that, we're better. And we're who we are, and we evolved into this wonderful thing that we are. And you've got to read these people and go back and think like they thought and look at things from their perspective, and you'll understand where you are today and why you're better off today, and so forth. But anyway, have a good day.